You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Hey, it's Ian Ballinger from the Free Stater here on the Lanterns Radio Network. Now, most people listen to the show when it goes up every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, or even on your iPhone podcast app. But you can also listen to the show over at lanterns.buzz. That's lanterns.buzz, where the show plays on replay every weekday and weekend at 11 a.m. Central Time. Every day throughout the week, you can listen to the replay of the show on the lanterns.buzz radio stream. Aha! 11 a.m. Central Time and 3 a.m. in the morning. Just fantastic times. If you're driving out late, you can listen to the show. And if you're waking up in the morning, driving to work, going to lunch during work, whatever, show's available for you to listen to right there on replay. That's lanterns.buzz. And while you're over there, I encourage you to check out some of the other great shows that the Lanterns Radio Network has to offer. You've got Bells of Liberty, Todd Huff Radio, Battle for Freedom, Patriot Politics, Defenders of American Exceptionalism, The HollowNet, Fires of Liberty, Battlefield Live, The Conservative Syndicate, and many other special programs. You may have heard back during CPAC even, they did a huge live stream, continuous coverage of CPAC. Go to lanterns.buzz for great content. We're here to fix the machine. Lanterns.buzz. The world's gone mad. This is the Free Stater. True conservatism, constitutionalism, may be in the minority now when it comes to the dialogue on political affiliation, but that doesn't mean we stop fighting. We fight for principles over party, values over politicians, and truth over feelings. You've entered a state of freedom. This is the Free Stater. This is the Free Stater. I'm Ian Ballinger, here from the plains of Kansas on the Lanterns Radio Network. Unfortunately, we're starting out this week's show with tragic news. A week shy of his first birthday, little baby Charlie Gard has passed away. Anyone that's been following this show over the past few weeks knows that the Charlie Gard story out of the UK has been a huge part of what we've talked about on the program. It's a tragic story. It's a story about big government overreaching into the lives of private citizens. It's a story about the failures of socialized medicine and the evils of big government. The evils of socialized medicine and the evils of a society that excuses it and doesn't defend life. And so, just a week shy of his first birthday, Charlie Gard has passed away. This from theblaze.com. Charlie's mother, Connie Yates, told the Daily Mail, "Our beautiful little boy has gone. We are so proud of you, Charlie. Charlie, who was 11 months old, suffered from mitochondrial depletion syndrome, a rare genetic disease. Earlier this week, Yates and Charlie's father, Chris Gard, ended their legal battle with the Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, seeking permission to take their son to the United States for an experimental treatment after an American doctor said that it was too late to treat him. The hospital has sought for months to remove Charlie's life support so he could die, quote, die with dignity. After Yates and Gard ended their appeal to bring Charlie to the United States, they requested that they at least be allowed to take him home. The hospital objected, arguing that plan was not in the best interest of Charlie. A judge ordered Thursday that Charlie be sent to hospice and for his life support to be removed. The details about which hospice facility Charlie was sent to were kept sealed by the court. In an emotional statement on Monday, Gard called his son an absolute warrior. We could not be prouder of him, he said, and we will miss him terribly. His body, his heart, his soul may soon be gone, but his spirit will live on for eternity, and he will make a difference to people's lives for years to come. We will make sure of that, Gard said in a statement. The news of Charlie's death comes just a week before what would have been Charlie's first birthday on August 4th. A family spokesman confirmed Charlie's death to the BBC. Although Yates and Gard raised over $1 million on their own to bring Charlie to the United States for the experimental treatment, they were barred from doing so by British law, which allows doctors to supersede parents' wishes if they deem it in the child's best interest. The Great Ormond Street Hospital argued that Charlie was terminally ill and it was in his best interest to, quote, be allowed to die. The controversial case gained international attention from Pope Francis, President Donald Trump. They offered their support to Charlie, gained international attention after they did. Republican lawmakers pursued legislation that would have granted Charlie and his parents lawful permanent status in the United States. Just minutes after the passing of Charlie, Vice President Mike Pence released on Twitter his statement, saddened to hear the passing of Charlie Gard. Karen and I offer our prayers and our condolences to his loving parents during this difficult time. And as many of the commenters in the Blaze comments section, as many freedom-minded people on Twitter are noting, this is just yet another example of the evils of socialized healthcare, the evils of a big, intrusive government. And again, as we noted at the beginning of the show, the evils of a society that values the right to die over the right to fight for your life. Truly a tragic story out of the UK. Our prayers are with the parents of Charlie Gard. Evil has not won. I promise you that. For those of you who have followed this show from the beginning, know that I am a Christian. As it says in Revelation 21:4, and he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will no longer be any death, There will no longer be any mourning or crying or pain. The first things have passed away. As it says in 1 Corinthians 15:55 through 57. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? For sin is the sting that results in death, and the law gives sin its power. But thank God, He gives us victory over sin and death through our Lord Jesus Christ. Evil has not won, but we as freedom-minded people, we as Christians, we as people who may not even be Christian, if you're not a Christian but you believe in the right to life, I will stand with you. If you believe in the parents' right to fight for their child's life, I stand with you. We are Charlie Gard. Our children are Charlie Gard. The powers that be, big government, want you to believe that they have total dominion over you. Total say in what happens in your life and the lives of your children and the lives of your spouse. We are blessed in America to at the very least have had founders who recognized that government could get too big and too intrusive and could rule over one's life. Who recognized the need to say, we will not allow this to come into our new nation. And so today in 2017, the day that the courts and the hospital in the UK allowed a baby to die, I beg of you to never give up the fight for life. I beg of you to never give up the fight for freedom. I beg of you to never give up the fight for American constitutional principles. The fight for life continues. The fight for individual liberty continues. It's a never-ending fight. I want to read a comment from theblaze.com's news story on this Charlie Gard case from Rapom Pundit. By denying Charlie the experimental treatment, they are dooming future Charlies to the same outcome. One does not usually find a cure without clinical studies, even if Charlie died while being treated. The researchers gain valuable knowledge about treating the disease. Another comment, this one from Bishop Dave. Is this death with dignity? Or is it death by gavel? This one from Sylvan. What dignity is there in your government deciding whether you live or you die? I had always heard death with dignity was about dying on your own terms. This story has nothing to do with that. Ben Shapiro, on his Twitter account 3 hours ago, Charlie Gard, the British baby who captured the world's attention, has died after life support withdrawn. From CNN, Ben Shapiro said, "Thank you, status." Again, our prayers are with Charlie Gard's parents, his family. We are deeply sorry for your loss. Back to the news. Speaking of Ben Shapiro, before we go on, before we go on, please don't forget about this Charlie Gard case. Don't let this be just another case that we forget in a week. Please, don't let this just be another story that we forget in a week, a day, a few hours. Because this fight for life over the culture of death that is growing in our society, it's a very real fight. It's a very important fight. I'm 20 years old. 20 years old. I want to be able to live in a country where I don't have to worry about the government coming in and saying, your child, it's in his best interest to die. I want to live in a country where I can get married, have kids, raise those kids, not the government raise those kids, not the government decide whether or not they have a right to fight for their own lives. This is a very real fight. And before we get on into other news stories, I want to beg you, plead with you, don't let this just be another news story that slips away and is forgotten. Let this be an example as to the evils of socialized medicine, the evils of big government, and why we need to keep fighting for life. Back to the news of this day. From thedailywire.com. Religion of peace, man screams Allah Akbar while stabbing people in Hamburg. Published today on thedailywire.com by Elliot Hamilton. A man embarked on a murderous rampage in a supermarket near Hamburg, Germany. The suspect had entered the supermarket and suddenly began stabbing customers before fleeing the building. Bystanders followed the suspect and alerted the police, who arrested the man shortly thereafter in a nearby street. The police department's official Twitter account wrote the following: an assailant has attacked and injured several people in a supermarket. One person has died, and the suspect has been arrested. While the police have not identified the suspect, witnesses told the press that the individual screamed Allahu Akbar as he continued stabbing patrons. Germany has faced considerable issues with radical Islamic terrorism over the past few years. On New Year's Eve in 2015, a gang of over 1,000 Muslim men sexually assaulted and raped over 100 women in Cologne. Last year, a Syrian Muslim refugee murdered a woman and injured two others with a machete. German police opinion about Chancellor Angela Merkel's refugee policy soured with the increase of radical Islamic extremism throughout the nation. A poll conducted following President Donald Trump's controversial travel ban showed that 53% of Germans wanted all Muslim migration to stop, compared to the 19% who did not want it to stop. An update on the story from the Daily Wire says that a German newspaper reports that the suspect was a Palestinian Arab born in Saudi Arabia who came to Germany as a refugee. Police describe him as a known Islamist and still have not determined his motive at the time. Well, I think his motive is pretty obvious. What's crazy is that a lot of left-wing sites are not citing this. CNN makes no mention of the Allah Akbar yelling. NBC News, in their article released an hour ago, makes no mention of the Allah Akbar yelling. or the man's ties to Islam. No other religion would get this leeway. It just amazes me the length that people on Twitter, the length that mainstream media will go to defend Islam when the texts of their Quran give no justification for defense, not from any moral person. Incredibly frightening times we are living in. We'll get to more news of the day, stories right after this break. You're listening to The Free Stater. I'm Ian Ballinger here on the Lanterns Radio Network. Before we go to break, I want to share with you an incredible opportunity that myself and my family have gotten involved in with this company called Wakaya Perfection. It was a company started by David Gilmour, the founder of Fiji Water. Wakaya Perfection has just fantastic products. It's a company that's helped me lose weight. Not a lot of people know this. At the beginning of the year, I weighed 245 pounds. I'm ashamed to say that. I really am. The freshman 15 for me was more like the freshman 40. I gained a lot of weight my first year of college. And again, I really am ashamed to say that. I let myself go, especially at such a young age. I didn't like who I was looking at in the mirror. Wanted to do something about it. This company, Wakaya Perfection, I gotta be honest, it helped me lose a lot of weight. I'm down to in the 190s now. I've lost over 50 pounds this year. Now, let's be clear about something. Losing weight takes work. There's no magic pill that is just going to, next day, you're 50, 60, 70 pounds lighter. It does take work. It does take commitment for change to happen in your life. Let's just say Wakaya Perfection has helped give me the tools and the information that have helped me lose all this weight. I've never felt better in my life. I encourage you, if you want a legitimate, real opportunity to better yourself, to better your life, and to find your own paradise, I encourage you to go to iansteam.mywakaya.com. That's Ian's, I-A-N-S, team.mywakaya.com. Check it out. If it's something for you, great. If it's not, that's great too. Just share it with a friend. I've never felt better in my life, losing all this weight. Never felt better in my life. There's other products. iansteam.mywakaya.com. iansteam.mywakaya.com. The path to paradise is in your own hands. Seize the opportunity. iansteam.mywakaya.com. We'll be right back here on the Lanterns Radio Network. This is the Free Stater. I'm Ian Ballinger from the plains of Kansas.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Hey, it's Ian Ballinger from the Free Stater here on the Lanterns Radio Network. Now, most people listen to the show when it goes up every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, or even on your iPhone podcast app. But you can also listen to the show over at lanterns.buzz. That's lanterns.buzz, where the show plays on replay every weekday and weekend at 11 a.m. Central Time. Every day throughout the week, you can listen to the replay of the show on the lanterns.buzz radio stream. Aha! 11 a.m. Central Time and 3 a.m. in the morning. Just fantastic times. If you're driving out late, you can listen to the show. And if you're waking up in the morning, driving to work, going to lunch during work, whatever, show's available for you to listen to right there on replay. That's lanterns.buzz. And while you're over there, encourage you to check out some of the other great shows that the Lanterns Radio Network has to offer. You've got Bells of Liberty, Todd Huff Radio, Battle for Freedom, Patriot Politics, Defenders of American Exceptionalism, The HoloNet, Fires of Liberty, Battlefield Live, The Conservative Syndicate, and many other special programs. You may have heard back during CPAC even, they did a huge live stream, continuous coverage of CPAC. Go to lanterns.buzz for great content. We're here to fix the machine. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome, Kmart shoppers. Kmart has low discount prescription prices. Visit our pharmacist today and compare our prices to what you're presently paying elsewhere.
You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back. There are a few video clips I want to play, but before we get to that, some context. This from CampusReform.com's Anthony Gakowski. Shapiro slams snowflakes at Capitol Hill hearing. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro and comedian Adam Carolla testified on Capitol Hill on Thursday about their experiences with today's college students. The hearing, called by the House Oversight Committee, aimed to identify the harms of infringing on the right to free speech on college campuses while seeking recommendations on how to encourage and protect First Amendment rights from a panel of experts including Shapiro and Carolla. Republican Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio began the hearing with a reel of video footage showing many of the several campus disruptions that have taken place over the past few years, including the violent takeover of Evergreen State College. We covered that several weeks ago. It's a terrible story. If you want to, you can go back on lanterns.buzz, freestated.lanterns.buzz. Find the podcast archive. There's a podcast we did on it. Very important story. Just shows the insanity going on the American college campus, on the American University campus. Anyway, the violent takeover at Evergreen State College, where President George Bridges was held hostage by student protesters. Jordan remarked, "This is where it all ends. You start with safe spaces, and it ends with students holding hostage the president of a university. That's why we're having this hearing." Ben Shapiro, who has spoken on dozens of college campuses, began his testimony by noting that he has encountered anti-free speech measures, administrative cowardice, and physical violence firsthand. In order to understand what's been going on at some of our college campuses, it is necessary to explore the ideology that provides the impetus for a lot of protesters who violently obstruct events, pull fire alarms, assault professors, and even other students, and the impetus of administrators who all too often humor these protesters. He continued, explaining that free speech is under assault because of a three-step argument used by the student protesters. The first step is that they say that the validity and invalidity of an argument can be judged solely by the ethnic, sexual, racial, or cultural identity of the person making the argument. The second is to suggest that those who claim otherwise are engaging in what they call verbal violence, while the final step is to conclude that physical violence is sometimes justified in order to stop such verbal violence. Shapiro concluded that as a result, the value of a view is no longer based on the logic or merit of the view, but on the level of victimization in American society experienced by the person espousing the view. Unquote for a second. In short, no longer do college campuses, college students view a view by its merit. No longer do we judge a man or woman by the content of their character, but we judge them by their sexual orientation, by their gender identity, whatever that is, by their race, the color of their skin, or their background. He went on to note that the popularization of the term microaggression has taught students to believe that the offensive words that they may or may not hear can be the equivalent to physical violence. He went on, words that you don't like deserve to be fought physically. Indeed, protesters all too often engage in physically violent disruption when they believe that their identity group is under verbal attack by someone, usually conservative, but not always. Shapiro concluded his remarks by suggesting that not only does all of this destroy free speech, but just as importantly, it turns students into snowflakes, craven and pathetic, looking for an excuse so they can earn points in the intersectionality Olympics and then use those points as a club with which to beat opponents. No view should ever be banned on the grounds that they offend somebody. Adam Carolla, meanwhile, discussed his experiences in the early days of his career when he toured college campuses and freely spoke about controversial ideas without a nary word of negativity. We got our paychecks and we went home, he said, but noted that when he attempted a similar tour with Dennis Prager 15 years later, he was met with college administrators who refused to host them. We need adults to start being adults. Our plan is to put them in a bubble, keep them away from everything, and somehow they'll come out stronger when they emerge from that bubble. Well, that's not happening. Could the faculty and administrators on these campuses act like faculty and administration? They arrested students for handing out a constitution at Kellogg Community College in Michigan. They arrested students for handing out pocket copies of the United States Constitution. That is the height of irony. And we're going to play some of the video and some of the excerpts from this hearing featuring Ben Shapiro and Adam Carolla. They both did a fantastic job of articulating why free speech is so important on the college campus and why we must defend free speech on the college campus. First, Ben Shapiro.
This is why the idea that speech is violence is so dangerous. It tells the members of a generation already beset by anxiety and depression that the world is a far more violent and threatening place than it really is. It tells them that words, ideas, speakers can literally kill them. It's an honor to testify before you here today. The reason that I'm with you is that I speak on dozens of college campuses every year, so I have some firsthand experience with the anti-First Amendment activities that have been taking place on the college campuses. I've encountered anti-free speech measures, administrative cowardice, even physical violence at campuses ranging from California State University at Los Angeles to University of Wisconsin at Madison, which is driving the legislation that Ms. Demings was talking about, to Penn State University to UC Berkeley, and I am not alone. In order to understand what's been going on at some of our college campuses, it's necessary to explore the ideology that provides the impetus for a lot of the protesters who violently obstruct events, pull fire alarms, assault professors and even other students, and the impetus for administrators who all too often humor these protesters. Free speech is under assault because of a three-step argument made by the advocates and justifiers of violence. The first step is they say that the validity or invalidity of an argument can be judged solely by the ethnic, sexual, racial, or cultural identity of the person making the argument. The second step is that they claim those who say otherwise are engaging in what they call verbal violence. And the final step is they conclude that physical violence is sometimes justified in order to stop such verbal violence. So let's examine each of these three steps in turn. First, the philosophy of intersectionality. This philosophy now dominates college campuses as well as a large segment, unfortunately, of today's Democratic Party, and suggests that straight white Americans are inherently the beneficiaries of white privilege and therefore cannot speak on certain policies, since they have not experienced what it's like to be black or Hispanic or gay or transgender or a woman. This philosophy ranks the value of a view not based on the logic or merit of the view, but on the level of victimization in American society experienced by the person espousing the view. Therefore, if you're an LGBT black woman, your view of American society is automatically more valuable than that of a straight white male. The next step in the logic is obvious. If a straight white male, or anybody else who ranks lower on the victimhood scale, says something contrary to the viewpoint of the higher-ranking intersectionality identity, that person has engaged in a microaggression. As NYU social psychologist Jonathan Haidt writes, microaggressions are small actions or word choices that seem on their face to have no malicious intent, but that are thought of as a kind of violence nonetheless. You don't have to actively say anything insulting to microaggress. Somebody merely needs to take offense. If, for example, you say that society ought to be colorblind, you're microaggressing certain identity groups who have been victimized by a non-colorblind society. Note, microaggressions, as the name suggests, are not merely insults. They are aggressions. They are the equivalent to physical violence. Just 2 weeks ago, psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett of Northeastern University published an essay in the New York Times suggesting that words should be seen as physical violence because they can cause stress, and stress causes physical harm. Thus, Feldman suggested it is reasonable, scientifically speaking, to ban or restrict speech you do not like at your school. This is both inane and dangerous. That's because it leads to the final logical step. Words you don't like deserve to be fought physically. When I spoke at California State University at LA, one professor threatened students who sponsored me by offering to fight them. He then posted a slogan on the door of his office stating, "The best response to microaggression is macroaggression." As Haidt writes, this is why the idea that speech is violence is so dangerous. It tells the members of a generation already beset by anxiety and depression that the world is a far more violent and threatening place than it really is. It tells them that words, ideas, speakers can literally kill them. Even worse, at a time of rapidly rising political polarization in the United States, it helps a small subset of that generation justify political violence. Indeed, protesters all too often engage in physically violent disruption when they believe their identity group is under verbal attack by someone, usually conservative but not always. Not only do some administrators look the other way, at Middlebury College, Cal State LA, Berkeley, Evergreen, actual crimes were committed and almost nobody has been arrested, but they actively forbid events from moving forward, creating a heckler's veto. The notion that if you are physically violent enough, you can get administrators to kowtow to you, to bow before you, by canceling an event you disagree with altogether. All of this destroys free speech. But just as importantly, it turns students into snowflakes, craven and pathetic, looking for an excuse to be offended so they can earn points in the intersectionality Olympics and then use those points as a club with which to beat opponents. A healthy nation requires an emotionally and intellectually vigorous population ready to engage in open debate at all times. Shielding college students from opposing viewpoints makes them simultaneously weaker and more dangerous. We must fight that process at every step. And that begins by acknowledging that whatever we think about America and where we stand, we must agree on this fundamental principle. All of our views should be judged on their merits, not on the color or sex or sexual orientation of the speaker, and those views should never be banned on the grounds that they offend someone.
One of the things he mentioned in there, that professor that said that the best way to fight back against microaggressions is macroaggression, the college campuses, our professors are literally teaching our students to be violent against people that they disagree with. How dangerous is that? Let's continue. Another video from this hearing, Ben Shapiro speaking.
Critical race theory. And
that's not that. I want to clarify before we start. That's not Ben Shapiro. That's a Congresswoman, Miss Plaskett. Stacey Plaskett, she is the delegate to the United States House of Representatives from the United States Virgin Islands at-large congressional district. Okay, so we got that context in, we got that out of the way. Let's continue with the video from the hearing.
It's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege that individuals have as a benefit of their white skin. And I don't think that, and I think universities would be remiss to then say that because you're white, you're not allowed to say anything that's critical of white people. I didn't know that white privilege actually went into that sphere. My understanding is it's just, and the issue is that white privilege makes people uncomfortable to talk about the societal privilege that they have.
Well, to me, what
All right, so there's Ben.
I say on campus
Ben giving his response
all the time is if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm also interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I would. This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly. But
really,
yeah. But from hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy. I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And I think there's one more distinction that has to be made. When we talk about cases like Taylor's, they're horrific, and the administration is siding with Taylor. The administration is doing the right thing by Taylor, or trying to do the right thing by Taylor, as they should be. And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for application of crime.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so before we go on and watch this final video clip, it's probably going to have to be the last video clip of the show. I want to make note, a lot of the YouTube comments making a note. 8-9 years ago, whatever, 2008, black man becomes president. Here's a black congresswoman arguing that white privilege exists when she herself is in a position of power. We have black sitting governors, we have black senators, we have black mayors, we have black sheriffs, we have black chiefs of police. A lot of the comments note, and I am inclined to agree with them, this victim mentality of the white man keeping the black man down, it doesn't exist. And it's racist, I would argue, to assume that just because you are white, you are born with certain and special privileges granted to you by society. The thing is that when asked, always, when asked, whether it be at campus speaking events or at events such as this, when asked, what are these special privileges that white people are given, there's never an answer. There's never a distinct answer. It's always, well, I think it's evident. All you have to do is look at society. You need to tell me where this exists so I can help you combat it. If you cannot, if you cannot tell me where this exists, then I can't help you defeat it. They don't tell you where it exists because it does not exist. The argument for white privilege's existence, it exists for one reason and one reason only: to create a victim mentality and garner sympathy, and to try to delegitimize an opponent's argument. You could do the same thing by saying that somebody is homophobic when they're trying to make an argument for getting the government out of marriage, or saying that somebody is anti-choice when they argue in favor of life. These labels that people get thrown onto them privilege because you're white, anti-choice, anti-women, are used to delegitimize the arguments that conservative speakers, or maybe not even conservative speakers, just people that are advocates for free speech. You could be a Democrat and be an advocate for free speech. You will have this thrown on you. We've seen professors who, as far as I understand, are not conservative, have these labels thrown onto them because they're advocates against this insanity that are happening on college campuses. It's only used to delegitimize you. Do not fall for it. All right, before we go, got to play this real quick. It's from the YouTube channel Ocean of Freedom. Just quick 5-minute clip, soundbite deal of Ben Shapiro brilliantly handling every question thrown at him. Quick video, and then we got to get out of here for this week.
The reasons why you have this hatred for, say, people who believe in, more conservative half of the American populace.
I think you do have some leftist professors who attempt to, be open to other ideas. I mean, Lonnie Guinier was one of my professors at Harvard Law School, and she ended up writing a job recommendation for me because we got along so well, and she's very far to the left. But that's more a rarity than it is the common thread. I mean, even if you put aside President Trump, the fact is that I think the polls showed that well under 10% of the faculty at Ivy League schools voted for Romney in 2012. So, I mean, this has been very consistent, and this is why I think you are seeing some of the violence. When I spoke at Cal State LA, you actually saw the professors calling me a member of the KKK before I got there. And so most of the students had no clue who I was, but they were perfectly willing to go out and protest and beat people up.
Mr. Zimmerman, are you doing anything? I assume your campus, Evergreen, it's got a kind of a reputation. Are you doing anything to?
We'll come back to that. We got to move on. I thank the gentleman, and I apologize. We're trying to give everyone a little extra time, but we can't go too much longer. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses. Ben Shapiro, who came up with the thug life, Ben Shapiro?
I have no idea. What may? I have never listened to a complete rap song in my entire life.
It's funny and it's well done. It has some of your greatest hits. Let me ask you.
And for those of you who don't know, the Thug Life Ben Shapiro, we're gonna have to play one sometime. The Thug Life Ben Shapiro meme is basically Ben Shapiro giving a sound and complete defense for an argument against a leftist, and then Thug Life music plays out in the background, and like Photoshop of gold chains and no Bay hat. It's just a funny meme.
So you mentioned the professors. Obviously, the professors overwhelmingly are on the left. Some are fair and want to do. Some are more pushing an ideology. But I wonder, I see some of these things that you've dealt with others. I mean, is it the professors doing this, or are these students just predisposed to do this? It seems like there's a lot of radical students anyways, and a lot of them are kind of going to do this even if the professors weren't egging them on. Is that true?
I think there are three groups. I think there are usually a couple of radical professors who egg them on, not the entire left faculty, because that would be pretty much everyone, but like a couple of radical professors who decide that they think it's worthwhile for there to be massive protests, some student organizers, and then very often lately, you've been seeing people bust in from the outside. So at Berkeley, you saw people coming in from Antifa and integrating with the Berkeley student population, and then doing acts of violence. At Cal State LA, there were a couple of busloads of people who were bust in. So it's really those three groups, I think.
And when you're dealing with the anti-Semitism and anti-Israel views on campuses, is that faculty-driven, or is that outside the university?
Well, I mean, I haven't dealt with that as much because I think that in the last couple of years, most of the opposition has been coming from the Black Lives Matter movement, from the Bernie Sanders socialist wing of the Democratic Party. It hasn't been coming too much from the Israel stuff, so I don't speak about the Israel stuff all that often on campus. But, I mean, the BDS, I know for a lot of Jewish students on campus, it's very uncomfortable because there are a lot of professors who support boycott, divestment, sanctions from Israel and activate their students to do the same.
So just from a conservative perspective, we look at some of what's going on college campuses, and we don't necessarily like it, but we don't really want government involved in a lot of this anyways. But on the other hand, people will point out is we're funding these universities. So the American taxpayer is underwriting a lot of this stuff. So Is there a role for government given that we're funding it, or is it just type of thing that, we fund it and we still got to just keep our hands off? If we weren't funding it, then I would think that there would not be a role for the federal government at all. But given, a lot of money is going to these universities.
Yes, the Wisconsin law that's been discussed repeatedly has been, I think, a little bit unfairly maligned because people are refusing to read the end of the phrase in the law, which is that this is speech that interferes with the speech of others, meaning if you have administrators who are basically handing a heckler's veto to people who are standing up in front of other speakers and then attempting to block it, that's not actually free speech, that's trespass. So I don't know that you need another piece of legislation. I think you do need enforcement of existing law that exists to prevent what is, in fact, criminal activity and not free speech activity. But there's going to have to be some sort of consequences for administrators who don't abide by the current law, because what they're doing is they are essentially saying, we can't shut down the speech, but if you go and you make a big fuss, then we'll say that in order to shut down the fuss, we have to shut down the speech. And if they continue to do that, then I don't see, why federal funding should be going to, I don't see why my taxpayer dollars should be going to a university that bans me because the university refuses to protect my right to free speech.
That's a good point. Now, you talked about the hierarchy of based on identity in terms of who does, and like a white male would be at the bottom kind of deal, but how honest is even that standard applied? Because like somebody like a Justice Clarence Thomas, who obviously has a very compelling background, how would he be received at these universities in terms of his story, given that he's a constitutional originalist?
Jason Riley from the Wall Street Journal. It's obviously intersectionality in that philosophy is a stand-in for hardcore leftism. And it's just a way of using multiculturalism as the entree to leftist points of view. It isn't actually, as you say, if Clarence Thomas says something, nobody on the left is going to say, well, he suffered as a black man, so his perspective is more valuable than Joe Biden's perspective on a particular issue. You're not going to hear anyone on the left ever say that.
Ben Shapiro, an absolutely fantastic mind in the conservative movement and the constitutionalist movement. I encourage you to go check him out at Ben Shapiro on Twitter and at dailywire.com. That's dailywire.com. Absolutely fantastic mind. Encourage you to go to lanterns.buzz and check out all the news stories they got on there. We're about to sign off for the week. Ben Shapiro 2020, I desperately hope he runs. God bless Laos Deo. Thanks for listening. This is the Free Stater from the plains of the great state of Kansas. I'm Ian Ballinger. This is the Lanterns Radio Network. Also listen to the show over at lanterns.buzz. That's lanterns.buzz, where the show plays on replay every weekday and weekend at 11 a.m. Central Time. Every day throughout the week, you can listen to the replay of the show on the lanterns.buzz radio stream. Aha! 11 a.m. Central Time and 3 a.m. in the morning. Just fantastic times. If you're driving out late, you can listen to the show. And if you're waking up in the morning, driving to work, going to lunch during work, whatever, show's available for you to listen to right there on replay. That's lanterns.buzz. And while you're over there, I encourage you to check out some of the other great shows that the Lanterns Radio Network has to offer. You've got Bells of Liberty, Todd Huff Radio, Battle for Freedom, Patriot Politics, Defenders of American Exceptionalism, The HollowNet, Fires of Liberty, Battlefield Live, The Conservative Syndicate, and many other special programs. You may have heard back during CPAC even, they did a huge live stream, continuous coverage of CPAC. Go to lanterns.buzz for great content. We're here to fix the machine. Lanterns.buzz.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.